Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Punto Final Translation Project podcast. This podcast, in which I'll be providing audio recordings of the English translations I create as part of the project, will be available as exclusive content for $3 tier and up subscribers on my Patreon, as well as to anyone who has contributed to the ongoing crowdfunding for the crowdfunded translation project. This inaugural episode will be available to all members of my Patreon page, paying and otherwise, to show you what kind of content you can look forward to if you decide to upgrade to $3 a month. Episode 1, Balance of a Campaign by Jaime Faivovich, from issue number 75 of Punto Final, which hit the newsstands on the 25th of February, 1968, discusses the generalized political malaise of the Chilean working class, and of the Chilean left in particular, in what would be the run-up to Salvador Allende's election as president in 1970. Before we get started, a project update. I am now, as of the 31st of March 2026, up to $245 out of the fundraising goal of $1,200 for the current installment of the Punto Final project, the 1969 long-form article Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet, by Punto Final co-founder and director Manuel Cabiese Donoso. Your contributions make work like this possible by helping me keep afloat during one of the most difficult times for translators in recent memory. Details on how to contribute are in the description. Balance of a Campaign by Jaime Faivovich. The parliamentary campaign has proceeded with an air of melancholy, to the indifference of the majority of the population. Only the candidates and the party machines are trying to breathe a certain dynamism and agility into it. But they're acting in the midst of a terrible solitude, crashing against the apathy of the citizenry. Certain sectors of the left are irritated that others are noting this collective lack of motivation and refuse to acknowledge it because, according to them, to do so would play into the hands of the right, who are trying to draw the masses away from the attraction of the sport of electoral politics. Nonetheless, the phenomenon exists independently of the will or blindness of any given political group. We are witnessing a total loss of faith and confidence in bourgeois representative democracy, which is more accentuated in the popular classes because they see the parliament being swapped out incessantly without any change to their miserable living conditions. Most of the population are certain that, yet again, the parties of the bourgeoisie will control Congress, that the promises will vanish following the elections, that the problems will remain insoluble, that there will be no stop to inflation, that the workers will continue to receive insufficient remuneration, that the peasants will not receive land, that modest families will have nowhere to live, that unemployment will continue, that there will be no place in the schools or universities for children and youth, that people of modest means will not receive medical or hospital care. In short, that everything will remain the same, with nothing being resolved and nothing being determined. For the right, the election means the possibility of increasing their parliamentary representation and their share of the vote, in order to prove that they are in fact in a position to impose their choice, Jorge Alessandri, in the presidential election. The Christian Democrats, DC, and the government want to know the extent of the disrepute into which they have fallen and the intensity of the public's rejection of their governance. In any case, they are trying to obtain a vote total that will allow them to insist on the right to designate Frey's successor in their dealings with possible allies. The Socialist Party, PS, are seeking to defeat the Ampuero faction. Footnote 1 refers to the faction ruled by Raúl Galvarino Ampuero Díaz, 1917 to 1996, former General Secretary of the PS, which broke away from the party after Ampuero's expulsion in 1967, after which he became the leader of the Unión Socialista Popular, Popular Socialist Union, or USP. Translator's note. And wish to prove to the Communist Party, PC, their ally in the Revolutionary Popular Action Front, FRAP, that their more national, more Latin American, more revolutionary position is the one that resonates with the people. The radicals, who still dream of having someone from their ranks as the presidential candidate of the United Left, trust that there will be an electoral rebound that allows them to make demands. And the PC need to outperform the PS and show maximum electoral vigor, both in order to rub the faces of the socialists in it by showing that the people of this country are not revolutionary or adventurist, or as they would put it, and that reformism and the peaceful path yield good dividends, and to orientate the action of the FRAP and continue being the political vedette sought out for dalliances by the Christian Democrats and the Radical Party, PR, and, with tenacity and patience, to stitch up the unity of the working class parties with sectors of the bourgeoisie. In this latter goal, they also have their eyes on 1970. Footnote 2. Year of the next presidential election, which would ultimately be won by Salvador Allende and the Unidad Popular coalition. Translator's note. After all, everyone's in agreement. The parliamentary elections on the 2nd of March are a mere preparation, a dry run for the presidential elections. Now, the key is to determine the balance of forces between oneself and one's adversaries, to determine future possibilities, and to pronounce oneself about alliances, combinations, pacts, and presidential candidates. As was expected, the campaign has been lacking in terms of political proposals at the national and international level. There was a fear to commit before knowing the result of the vote, because the cabals and collusive arrangements will only come after that. The right tried to capitalize on the discredit into which the Christian Democrats have fallen, when in point of fact, they contributed to Frey's victory. Footnote 3. Eduardo Frei Montalva, Christian Democrat, 1911 to 1982, President of Chile, 1964 to 1970. His party was a recipient of CIA financial assistance starting in 1962, and Frey himself was made aware that he and his party were being bankrolled by the CIA starting in 1964. Supported the coup against the Allende government, but later opposed the dictatorship that replaced it. Murdered with weaponized botulism by Pinochet in 1982. Translator's note. Supported all of the reactionary measures taken by this government, and have found in the governing party a jealous defender of monopolies and capital. The National Party, PN, has based its campaign on Alessandri possibly returning to power. But Alessandri and Frey are Siamese twins with different heads but the same thoughts in the same body, nourished by imperialism and the economic clans. Footnote 4. Jorge Alessandri Rodriguez, 1896 to 1986, President of Chile from 1958 to 1964, son of Jorge Alessandri Palma, President of Chile from 1920 to 1925 and 1932 to 1938, right-wing presidential candidate in 1970. Translator's note. The Christian Democrats and the government have sought to distract the trenchant criticism that their disastrous handling of public affairs has earned from the entire political spectrum and the citizenry in general by throwing up a few fireworks like the constitutional amendment, which was copied from the proposal made by Alessandri towards the end of his administration. At the very least, this campaign has served to expose numerous cases of fraud, questionable dealings, speculation, and immorality, and confront the DC with them. The one that had the greatest impact was the revelation by a socialist candidate, Erich Schneck, concerning the appropriation of funds from the Banco del Estado, which belonged to all Chileans, by a few prominent politicians and businessmen from the DC. These facts, combined with so many others that have been discovered during this administration, make a mockery of the supposed solvency and incorruptibility of this party, which, despite its pure beginnings, is now as corrupt as all the other bourgeois groups that have come to power. During the campaign, the DC leadership muzzled rebellious factions, preventing them from challenging the party line and forcing them to close ranks in defense of all aspects of the government's performance. Following the elections, the Christian Democrats may enter into a critical phase. The internal ideological divisions, tensions, and infighting that have built up have been pacified for the moment, But the rival currents will force the issue after the 2nd of March. It is neither utopian nor idealist to hope that when the time comes, a torrent of revolutionary elements will leave the DC. The DC includes workers and peasants. There is a popular element in the party. There are intellectuals and young people whose positions are increasingly radicalized. They have little chance of taking over the party. If they fail, they will surely break with the reactionary groups that have predominated thus far in the DC. The left have placed the emphasis on criticizing the Christian Democrats and the right, but they have not put their own cards on the table so as to allow the electoral process to revolve around their proposals, to open up debates so that the citizenry could pronounce themselves on them. The parties of the left have praised the expropriation of the refineries and the oil deposits from the International Petroleum Company by the military government in Peru, and expressed their solidarity with these measures. However, they did not have the audacity, decisiveness, or imagination, for example, to raise the banner of nationalization or expropriation of the U.S. companies that exploit the copper, saltpeter, and iron here in Chile. In general, the left did not showcase any new original ideas in this campaign. They were not even able to present a compact, homogeneous front. People rightly wonder what left we're talking about if one party in the FRAP says one thing and the other says the exact opposite. So great is the confusion that nobody knows what the left represents, what it wants, what it offers, how it intends to gain power and to what end, what sort of society it wishes to build. On the other hand, rather than contributing to a rapprochement of the FRAP parties and strengthening this organization, the election campaign moved them even further apart and eliminated all organic bonds between them. The FRAP has definitively ceased to exist, which points up the need to structure the popular movement on other bases and conditions. The case of the occupation of the land that was to become the Población Violeta Parra in Las Barrancas is an example of the ugliness that can be caused by sectarianism and the lack of coordination and mutual understanding amongst the working class parties. But then they turn around and talk about being united in spirit. Footnote 5. Poblaciones in Chile are encampments established by landless peasants who came to the cities seeking better living conditions and found that they had no place to live. The encampments, many of which have since developed into urban neighborhoods, were first created by occupying unused land and holding it despite the best efforts of the state and private landowners to evict them. Translator's note. Footnote 6. Las Barrancas, a district of western Santiago, renamed Pudahuel in 1975. Translator's note. Whatever explanations the communists may give, their conduct during this mass action caused deep unease and resentment in the socialist base. It was the pobladores from this tendency who initiated the operation. They had to confront the military police and withstand the full fury of police repression. When the mobile group succeeded in evicting them, despite their courageous and tenacious resistance, the communists showed up. The military police did not oppose the land being occupied by these pobladores, who did so without a struggle. Later, the socialists tried to enter the land that had been occupied by the communists in order to defend the victory together. But when they were preparing to do so, they discovered that their class siblings, their political allies, had cordoned off the area to prevent them getting in. Footnote 7. Pobladores are people who set up and live in poblaciones. Translator's note. Footnote 8. Grupo Móvil, the name of the specialized unit of Carabineros de Chile, the Chilean military police, in charge of repressing protests, now known as Fuerzas Especiales, or Special Forces. Translator's note. Scoring partisan political points was more important to the Communist Party at the time than consolidating popular unity. In Santiago's 1st district, in addition to parliamentarians, a mayor will be elected to replace the Christian Democrat Ms. Sara Gajardo, who died. The FRAP parties and the radicals ensured the victory of the mayoral candidate in Santiago. Radicals, communists, and social democrats reached an agreement and offered the candidacy to the Socialist Party as a trial run to pave the way for a future broader agreement. The The PS, currently led by Senator Carlos Altamirano, acting General Secretary, rejected the maneuver and the proposal. What did the PC do? They abandoned the PS and reached a deal with the PR and the Social Democrats, standing a member of the latter party as a candidate. Does this not implicitly contradict the repeated statements of the PC about how socialist-communist unity is fundamental? It is said that elections should be used by the revolutionary parties to educate the masses, awaken class consciousness in them, prove to them that they are the eternally exploited, and incite them to struggle against the system that subjugates them. However, this election campaign proves that the traditional left, with its strong penchant for the electoral route, does not put any of these teachings into practice, and just campaigns like any other bourgeois party. The left's tragedy is that they reject armed struggle, but are also unprepared to use the electoral route for revolutionary purposes. Jaime Faivovich, 1968. And that ends this first inaugural episode of the Punto Final Translation Project podcast. As mentioned at the beginning, future episodes will be available to anyone who either supports the project financially or joins my Patreon on the $3 and up tier. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to producing another one for you soon. Keep sharing the updates and getting the word out. All of your efforts are greatly appreciated.